The race for Alaska Senate in the 2026 midterms continues to look like one that is a key opportunity for Democrats to win across the state of Alaska for a Senate seat. Now, of course, there is a lot of time still to go in this election cycle and to see what actually may end up taking place across the state. But Mary Peltola, a very influential figure across the state of Alaska who's won statewide for a United States House of Representatives seat and came very close to winning that House seat on the same ballot that President Trump won on, is running for the United States Senate in 2026. It was the Democrats' best pick opportunity to pick a candidate who could win across the state of Alaska. Chuck Schumer really encouraged this, and Mary Peltola ultimately ended up joining in the race and is running for the United States Senate seat in the 2026 midterms. Now, this is going to be significant because of the fact that Mary Peltola has won across the state, won statewide before. People know who Mary Peltola is, and in what is expected to be a Democratic environment, we would expect Mary Peltola to perform relatively well across the state of Alaska. Some of this latest polling we've seen out also says the same thing. The Alaska Survey Research has the first round of voting with no information, but the final round with Peltola +2. And for context, I want to remind you guys that Alaska has ranked choice voting. That's why we see the first round and the final round on these polling numbers. And then similarly for Data for Progress, we see they actually do have information about the first round. Peltola +6, Peltola having 49% of the vote in that. And then on that final round, Peltola is still +6, but receiving 53% of the vote. So the voters who voted for another candidate at the start are saying overwhelmingly they're more likely to vote for Mary Peltola as their second choice. And this is significant and something that Republicans should be deeply worried about. Because right now, that first round of voting for the Data for Progress poll says that Mary Peltola is already at 49% of the vote in the first round. So realistically looking at it, Peltola doesn't have to pick up much of the vote left to end up on top in that final round of voting. But of course, this isn't all the information that we need. This isn't all the information that's going to be available. And this isn't going to decide the election. You know, this poll back from July 28th through August 4th, or a poll from August 2nd to the 5th. These aren't going to decide the election, but they are key in showing that Democrats have an opportunity here to flip a race that otherwise you might not have thought was flippable. If you go back to mid-June, to the end of June really, the New York Times had a poll, but only information about the first round was released. No information about a final round was released for information-wise, but Sullivan was +2 in that New York Times poll with 47% of the vote, Peltola at 45%. If we date back the Alaska Survey Research at the beginning of June, we see Peltola was +5, 49% to 44% for Sullivan. So similar situation to that of the Data for Progress poll. We don't have information on the latest Alaska Survey Research poll in the first round, so it makes it a little difficult to compare on those notes. But also the Alaska Survey Research poll in the middle of May, Peltola +5. So we've continued to see Peltola outperforming what you would expect for a candidate in Alaska. It's not really a surprise as she's won statewide before, and I actually want to take a moment and look more at that for you guys to understand. But Mary Peltola won across the state of Alaska by nearly 10% back in 2022. Keep in mind, 2022 was not a year that Democrats were expected to perform well. President Biden had been president for 2 years at this point. It was his first midterm election of his presidency, and it was highly expected that Republicans were going to perform really well across the nation, given Biden's deeply disapproved of polling numbers, etc. But ultimately, a big cause for why this may not have happened was the overturning of Roe versus Wade. But ultimately, Mary Peltola came in, defeating former Governor Sarah Palin by nearly 10% in 2022. You date that to 2024, she nearly won on the same ballot that President Trump won on. Peltola sitting at 46.37% of the vote, and her Republican opponent at 48.41% of the vote. So significant on that as well. She nearly won on the same ballot that President Trump won on back in 2024. President Trump on the national level performed really well back in 2024. He proved again that he was able to win elections. But the difference is that candidates that are not named Donald Trump have a tougher time winning across states, not just in Alaska, but in other states as well. The interesting thing about Alaska is they're not so prone to Trump. Lisa Murkowski was not endorsed by President Trump back in 2022, but ultimately ended up winning that race against her Republican opponent in the race. And that, remind you, Lisa Murkowski is a Republican. She caucuses with the Republicans, etc. So that's significant as well. The state of Alaska, while votes for Trump, isn't necessarily inclined to support all the candidates that Trump does. And in 2026, we are expecting this race to be extremely close, especially when we look back at 2020 when Dan Sullivan ran for the seat and ultimately won the race by 12.7%. That's not the expectation going into the 2026 midterms. The expectation would be that this race is a lot closer. Some even maybe say that this race is under a percentage point for the person that wins this race. Others may say that it's anywhere from 1 to 5%, but I don't know a single person who currently is predicting that this race goes to Dan Sullivan, or Mary Peltola for that matter, by over 5%. So Dan Sullivan in a much worse position in 2026 than he was back in 2020. And it's showing. Polling is showing it. The metrics that go into the past elections across the state of Alaska, including the 2022 midterms, the House race, Mary Peltola won statewide. She knows how to do this. So Dan Sullivan certainly has a tougher time this election than he did 6 years ago at winning this race. So, with all of that said, the 2026 Senate election in Alaska is very key, very important, and it's going to be a really interesting one. The Vote Hub margin currently has this at the probability level nearly tied, with Dan Sullivan sitting at a 49.4% chance of winning, Mary Peltola at 50.6%. And it shows why. Overall, polling is close in this race. When you go to the vote share, when you go to the probability, every metric that you look at, there is a high chance that this race is going to be very, very close, a nail-biter election, and one that could decide Senate control. If Democrats flip, say, North Carolina, if they flip Maine and Ohio, but they can't flip Iowa or Texas, this race would decide Senate control. If Republicans win it, they're at a 50-50 tie. If Democrats win it, they have 51 seats in the United States Senate. This election could decide Senate control in the 2026 midterms, and that's why we are paying so close attention to this race going into the midterm elections. So, with all of that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys believe that this Alaska Senate race is going to be as close as I do? Because I really do. I think that given the historical odds, when you date back to Mary Peltola's first victory across the state in 2022, winning by 10%, coming within 2% of winning back in 2024 on the same ballot Trump won on, I think this race is set to be close. I don't even know that it's much of a debate. But of course, I want to know what you guys think as well. Do you guys believe that it's as close as everybody's saying? Do you guys believe that maybe Mary Peltola is outperforming what she actually will on election day? Do you believe Dan Sullivan wins? I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Love reading through those and replying to you all and seeing where you guys stand on these races as well. So let me know what you guys think. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. All my links to all my other social medias are in the description as well. You're welcome to check those out. I'm trying to do a better job posting on those as well. But yeah, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys again so much for watching.